Hello and welcome to another episode of All Politics is Local. I'm your host, John Tian. All Politics is Local is a production of the Greater Blackstone Valley Democrats. For more information about the Greater Blackstone Valley Dems, feel free to visit our website at www.gbvdems.org. With me in the studio tonight is a candidate for state rep, Pat Malone. Pat, welcome to the studio.
Thank you, John. I appreciate you having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. What's the district that you're running in? Worcester 9th, is it? Or
It's the 8th Worcester, so
8th
it
Worcester.
comprises the towns of Uxbridge, Blackstone, Bellingham, and Millville.
Okay. All right, so let's learn a little bit about Pat Malone. Why are you running? You appear to be a little bit younger than me.
Yeah.
Why are you running, and what's the good news about your candidacy?
So I decided to run because, well, I've been interested in politics for a long time, but I was more interested in the international relations side of things. I went to UMass Amherst. I studied political science and economics. I always wanted to go into the State Department or something like that. Mm-hmm. You know, I applied for a scholarship to go to Kyrgyzstan. I took Russian, and then I, by chance, sort of wound up working on the Joint Committee as an intern. I don't like to embellish my credentials at all, but with the Joint Committee on Mental Health, Substance Use, and Recovery on Beacon Hill, where I sort of saw how important state and local government are and how much more intimately they affect our day-to-day lives than most other branches of government in the country.
Sure, and I always talk to people about, your vote when it's local actually has more impact.
Oh, absolutely.
And what's really distressing to me is that people don't vote unless it's a presidential year.
Right.
And that's when your vote has the least impact.
Right.
People should be voting in every election that they can. Certainly in townwide springtime elections here in Massachusetts, they should be voting. And in off years like this year, 2018, they should be voting.
Absolutely.
It makes me crazy that people don't.
Yeah, and I mean, especially this primary. I mean, it's on September 4th, which is, it's the first day of school for a lot of these towns. It's the day after Labor Day. Even when the election day isn't on such a day that's conducive to a low turnout, I mean, it's decided the Democratic primary by around 10% of voters in the district.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you're a part of the 10% of people in the district who are voting in this thing, I mean, your voice really counts.
Really counts, yeah. And that's why we should have higher turnout for things like this. It makes me crazy that we don't.
Right, absolutely.
I mean, I look at all the springtime elections, and 15% of the town decides who runs the town.
Right.
That's kind of crazy. My thought also was that we should change the laws so that we can have a primary earlier in the year. Having the primary so close to election day really doesn't give the primary winner much of a chance to mount a campaign.
Right. I'm inclined to agree with that. Because we've been in primary mode for about a year now. Well, not a year. I mean, it depends on when the candidate announced. For me, it's been about 8 months.
Sure.
So 8 months for the primary, and then you got 2 months.
Right, for the general.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a very tight window, to focus on the...
Yeah. Well, we also, in presidential years, we have two primaries. We'll have a presidential primary in March, and then our state primary in September in presidential years.
Right.
Which I think is ludicrous. Have the primary at the same time as the presidential primary, and we should, in the off years, we should do it again in March rather than in September. But
Absolutely.
I think it's going to take a legislative change to make that happen.
Right. A lot of people have been talking about a ballot question for a spring primary. I don't know how much momentum that'll get. I don't know how strongly people feel about that issue, but
Sure.
I mean, it's certainly definitely worth considering.
So I think we wandered off though from the question. Why are you running? Let's tell my listeners or my viewers what Pat's all about.
So, yeah, when I was working on the Joint Committee on Mental Health, Substance Use, and Recovery, I saw how important state and local government was. And I was at school, so I was back and forth. But I came back to the district, and at that point we had a town even closer than it was then, but on the verge of receivership because the schools were so underfunded. You have property taxes on the rise in Blackstone. We had an issue with certain soil reclamation projects in South Uxbridge. The roads are always in dubious shape. And I figured that these are problems that have solutions. I mean, I think the solutions are out there, and I think they're attainable, and I think there's a lot of energy directed towards finding them on Beacon Hill. And so I figured that I would throw my hat in and be a voice for these solutions to the problems that my constituents are facing in the 8th Worcester.
Awesome. Let's talk a little bit about the issues that are facing your district. School funding is a big one.
Right, absolutely. I mean, so this Millville recently, they had to pass a tax override to continue funding their public services, like the senior center, public safety, trash pickup, and the override failed. And there's this idea right now that money was mismanaged, but in reality, I mean, the problem stems from what was going on at the state level. I mean, this was a long time in the making because the state, when Millville and Blackstone first regionalized, they promised 100% reimbursement for regional transportation. They haven't gotten it since 2002 because year after year after year, the state breaks its commitment to fully funding regional transportation. And this happens in dozens of municipalities throughout the state and creates a major hardship for both the town and for the taxpayer at the end of the day. I mean, that's part of the puzzle. Part of the puzzle, too, is the Chapter 70 funding formula. I mean, most of the assumptions made in it reflect the realities from 1993 and not 2018. You know, the assumptions surrounding the percentage of students with special education requirements in your town, the assumptions about the cost of teacher health insurance. I mean, these are things that all need to be brought up to date with the realities of 2018.
Mm-hmm. That makes perfect sense. So let's another thing on your agenda is commercial development throughout your district. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Right. That's part of the problem with the regional transportation. I mean, the towns already struggle for money to fund the schools, and then Bellingham, since 1993, since Walmart came in, since 495 was built before then, has managed to put together a very sizable tax base. And they've been able to do a lot with that. Blackstone, Uxbridge, Millville. I mean, this is I hear this very often knocking doors, but they haven't so much. I mean, there's limited industry in those four towns.
Mm-hmm. They're more bedroom communities.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I mean that creates a situation where most of the tax burden is falling on the homeowner. And in certain cases, you know, seniors on fixed incomes who really can't afford tax hikes or overrides. So I think, you know, a long-term solution to the problems faced by a lot of these towns, especially the financial problems, is bringing in industry, bringing in commercial development so that they can expand the tax base and have a source of revenue to draw from to fund the schools and to fund other things too. I mean, the roads need repairs.
Sure.
We need to fund public services. Millville right now doesn't have a source of revenue to fund their senior center, or you know, right now they're talking about where they're going to find another $39,000 from, because the recent town meeting that happened. I don't know if you followed that at all.
I followed a little bit. I know that my favorite candidate for state senate, Tom Morale,
Yes.
was at one of the meetings about the Millville Senior Center with the threat of it being closed.
Right.
And I'm not really up on everything that's going on there, though. But what about the $39,000?
So they called a super town meeting recently between Blackstone and Millville, and the regional school committee needed another $39,000 for the budget that exists right now. The town meeting, Tom Morelli was there also. You know, we sat next to each other. But the decision that was made was to kick it back to Millville, and now Millville's going to have to find $39,000. And they're not sure where that's going to come from. I mean, that could mean a police officer, a firefighter.
Sure.
I mean, even further cuts to public services. And I think it's time that we lay the blame for the situation where it belongs, which is with the state. The state's broken promises on regional transportation funding, and with the need to fix the Chapter 70 school funding formula.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So, what kind of commercial development would you like to see come in? Are you talking manufacturing? Are you talking major malls or anything like that? What would you like to see? Well,
it depends on what's available. You know, I know Uxbridge right now is bringing in the Campanelli project, which is sort of a business park from a developer, I believe, based out in Worcester, which I was told this morning that it's going to bring in about $1 million a year into the town's coffers.
Oh, nice.
Right, exactly. And that's a huge boost for the local economy. I mean, it depends what the people want. There was talk recently of, at the Bellingham Business Association Candidates Forum, someone mentioned that we should explore the idea of bringing in biomedical device manufacturers or you know, that sort of thing.
Sure, that kind of thing that requires a highly skilled workforce,
right,
an educated workforce. Yeah, the type of people that will, live in town, pay their taxes, all that good stuff.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. That could be a huge shot in the arm for, Uxbridge, Blackstone, Millville. Bellingham, I know there are a lot of concerns about the traffic that's already there. It would have to be something that they discuss at town meeting.
Sure. Sure. Well, yeah, Bellingham also has the advantage of 495, whereas the other three towns really don't have much of a highway. I know 146 goes through part of Uxbridge. It intersects with Route 16 over there.
Right.
But really, as far as highways are concerned, 495 is like a lifeline. Look at, here in Milford, we have 2 exits on 495.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
they are busy.
Right, right.
There's business everywhere over there. I know here in Milford we have the dual tax rate as well. Businesses pay a higher tax rate than homeowners here in Milford. I don't know the situation in any of the towns, Bellingham or Millville or any of those.
Right.
But here in Milford, I know that works out quite well. For residents, the residential tax bill is kept a little bit lower, artificially lower,
Right,
by charging a higher tax rate on businesses in town. But they do well. The businesses do well for being here. So maybe you do pay a little bit higher taxes, but it's a nice location.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. How about campaign progress? How's things going? You got your primary coming up. Here it is the middle of August, so it's only a couple of weeks away.
Yeah, it's 20-something days and change until the primary.
Okay. So people should get out and register right now if they want to vote in the primary.
Yes,
Right.
the deadline's August 15th.
Okay.
Tomorrow, right?
Tomorrow, yeah, that would be
so the
tomorrow.
deadline to register is tomorrow.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, I don't think this is going to get on the air in time for people to,
Oh, probably
to take
not,
advantage
probably
of
not,
it. Here we are on
unfortunately.
the 14th. I don't think it'll be on the air until the weekend.
Right, right.
But in any case, what's your sense? Cautious optimism. What's your sense of how the vote may turn out for you?
Yeah, I would definitely say cautious optimism. I mean, our opponent's running a pretty good campaign himself, and I do feel confident, but anything can happen. I mean, you never know, especially in a race this small, especially when voter turnout's probably going to be under 10%. I mean, it's anyone's game, really.
Right. My wife and I were driving over to Woonsocket. We went to Ocean State Job Lot in Woonsocket the other day. And driving down 126, we noticed a lot of your signs. Malone signs were all over the place there. And there were some signs for your Democratic opponent. And there were signs for, I believe, the Republican who's running in the race. And the funny thing is, Republicans, for some reason, think, if I'm a homeowner and I'm going to put in a lawn sign, I'm going to put in 2 or 3.
Right, right.
I don't know if they think that they're fooling someone by saying there's more support for this guy than meets the eye or something, but they'll put one at the driveway and one at the other end of the property, or
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's really silly to me to see that. It's just it's a transparent effort at manipulating people. It appears. I mean,
Well, that's the old trick. You stick it right next to the property line, so it looks like both homeowners are supporting.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Your candidate.
Yeah. So that's going on out there. I read something too on Facebook about some of your signs going missing.
Yes.
What happened there?
Who knows? I mean, it's probably just vandals. I knew a guy at UMass, and he would say that when he was 16 or 17, he would drive out and steal a bunch of election signs with his buddies. So maybe it's a situation like that. At the end of the day, though, I mean, they're $3 a piece. We plan to lose some. So.
Right. It's not going to break the bank, but it's just frustrating.
Right. Exactly. Because you notice they're missing. You got to drive out there to put another one in. Sure. And it might go missing again.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, there was a time when I was doing lawn signs for somebody. I think it was during the Obama campaign back in 2008, where a number of them went missing, to the point where I was considering mounting one of those hunting cameras. I don't know if you've ever seen those.
Yeah.
You can put the infrared hunting camera. You can strap it to a tree, and it's motion enabled.
Right,
It's got a motion detector on it. I really wanted to get one. It's about a $400 camera, so I never did it. But I really wanted to, because it's just frustrating when we're going through a lot of effort to identify people who want lawn signs, and then they just go missing. That's really just totally unfair.
Right, right.
Leave these people alone. If someone's supporting their candidate, you should leave them alone and let them support their candidate. That's just wrong.
Yeah. Well, one of my friends did. He had the same issue. He ran city council campaigns down in Virginia, and he noticed a bunch of lawn signs were going missing. So what he did is he covered them with Vaseline, so the people would go in and take them, and in their hands would just get covered in this stuff. And people think, what? You know?
That's one way to do it. Make
Yeah.
them slippery. You can't pull it out of the lawn if it's too slippery.
Right, exactly. I don't know if we'll use that, but I thought it was interesting.
Sulfuric acid might work too.
Oh, yeah.
Well, no, then the sign would dissolve. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about your priorities once you're elected into the House of Representatives on Beacon Hill. What would you say would be your top 3 legislative priorities?
I'm going to have to say, obviously, school funding. I know we already talked about that, but fighting to fully fund regional transportation, fighting to fix the Chapter 70 funding formula. I mean, those are incredibly important, not just to the towns in our district, but across the board. I mean, we're at the point now where you have towns suing the state over this stuff. I mean, I believe Southbridge is suing the state over the Chapter 70 funding formula. I mean, it says in the Constitution that the state shall provide funds for the education of its citizens. You know, and I think in recent years the ball has sort of been dropped on that issue.
Yeah, and Southbridge, I believe their schools are in receivership right now, right?
Right, right. I mean, if we don't do something with the school funding issue that Millville is facing right now, I mean, it's very possible that they'll wind up in a similar position, which is, you know, talking to people in Southbridge, it's not necessarily the place you want to be.
Right. Right.
But I'm a firm believer in protecting the environment and, by extension, our natural resources and our health. I don't think we give the DEP enough money to do its job right now, when half of every cent on the dollar spent in the state is going towards protecting the environment. You know, between 2006 and 2016, you saw enforcement rates drop by 75%, I believe, according to a Boston Globe article. And I mean, the common sense indicates that means that less than 25% of the people who are violating these regulations are
being caught or punished.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I mean, if you have the regulations, you need to give the agency the resources that they need to enforce them. You know.
Sure. One of the things that I was just discussing with Brian Murray, our state rep from here in Milford, was a bill that I asked him to put forward to ban the practice of rolling coal. I don't know if you're familiar with rolling coal at all. People like to blow black smoke out of their diesel-powered trucks. They install extra-large fuel injectors for that very purpose, so that they can inject massive amounts of diesel fuel into the engine and cause black smoke to pour out of their stack. And they put bumper stickers on that say, like, Prius repellent.
Right,
You know,
I've seen those before.
It's ridiculous, and someone did it to me. You know, I don't even drive a Prius. My car is a gasoline-powered Chevy Cruze. It's just it's a little car, sure, but he did it to me, and his license plate said EPA LOL.
Oh,
and
man.
I got really disgusted with that. I called around to see, you know, if there was anything I could do about this.
Right.
What they're doing is against federal law, the Clean Air Act.
Really?
It is absolutely against the Clean Air Act. But try to find someone who can arrest someone for a violation of the Clean Air Act. It's not like the police can pull them over for violating the Clean Air Act.
Right, exactly,
You know? So we need legislation at the state level that says modifying your vehicle in this manner is wrong and you can't do it.
Right.
And if you're caught doing this, if you're caught rolling coal, then then there can be some form of penalty to make you stop doing that. And so that's something that Brian is working on for me. I hope when you get into the House of Representatives on Beacon Hill, you'll sign on as a co-sponsor. That's going to be up in the next legislative session.
Yeah, I'll look at it. You know, I haven't had coal rolled on me, but I've seen it done.
Yeah, there's plenty of videos on YouTube of these idiots doing this, and it boggles my mind as to why. You know, these days I work in the solar power industry, and when I see somebody doing that kind of stuff, I look at it as you're undoing all my efforts.
Right.
You know, here I am helping the environment by reducing carbon, and you're increasing carbon on purpose because you want to.
Yeah.
Because you think it's funny, and you'll own the libs by doing this, and it's just it bugs me.
Yeah, people get fired up about it. One of my buddies used to work in a bakery And someone put an order for a cake, and it said, Dale rolls coal or something, and a picture of a truck belching out black smoke. And it's like, happy birthday.
A chocolate cake, I suppose.
Right, probably, yeah. That would be appropriate.
with some dark chocolate chips or something. Yeah.
Right, absolutely.
Any other legislative priorities? You talked a little bit about Chapter 70 again, but what other priorities might you have?
Commercial development, I know we talked about that, but that's big on the list. And that goes hand in hand with infrastructure development. It's kind of a chicken and the egg scenario. A big obstacle for Millville, for South Uxbridge, for certain parts of Blackstone is the lack of water and sewer infrastructure, especially in South Uxbridge. Businesses to come in and start a business in South Uxbridge, which is mostly, there's quite a bit of space there for them to do that.
Sure, there's a lot of open space. Yeah.
Right, but they would have to drill their own wells, dig their own septic system, which adds a pretty big price tag to the cost of doing business here.
Sure.
I think
it's either that or supply the infrastructure for pipes.
Right, exactly.
And both of those are huge expenses.
Right. The price tag for extending the sewer to South Uxbridge, I think it's about $20 million, if I'm not mistaken. But part of that is going after grant money. There's money in the Economic Development Fund, money in the Community Block Development Grant under CDF2 to fund these types of projects and to fund things like downtown revitalization, which has been a concern among some people I've spoken to in Blackstone. The money's out there, and bringing in industry can help us get some money to expand our infrastructure and to improve our existing infrastructure, to improve the roads. There's a bridge in Blackstone that washed out recently that...
Oh, really?
Yeah, if you're going to BMR, it's the bridge right across from that. Half of that is just, it got flooded or something during a storm, and it's sort of crumbling. Wow. Half of it's crumbled off.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So it's time to fix that.
Right, absolutely. I was talking about that with someone today, actually.
Okay. So we still have about 10 minutes or so left. Why don't you explain to my voters why someone should vote for you?
Okay. So I'm not a politician by any stretch of the imagination. I do hardwood floors for a living, and yeah, what I learned working in small, locally owned businesses, what I learned doing hardwood floors, something that everybody in construction knows, that I think it's important for someone who's going to represent the 8th Worcester on Beacon Hill to know too, is that some days you go into work, the job's not that hard. I do hardwood floors, so maybe the finish is coming right off. Maybe you're out of there 2 hours earlier than you expected. Some days it's not. Some days it's very tough, and when it's tough, what I've learned is you get to work and you get the job done. That's what we're doing with this campaign. I've personally knocked on about 3,000 doors so far. Yeah, and I'm going to have knocked on many more by the general. I'm aiming for 10,000, which is,
Yeah, it's quite a target.
Right. But yeah, we're knocking doors. We're talking to people. A lot of the people I speak to, we don't agree on every issue, but at the end of the day, we're all going to be driving on the same roads. We're all drinking the same water, and we're all, for the most part, going to send our kids to the same school. Right. So my message is just sort of, let's make them better. Let's get to work. Let's get the job done.
Well, I talk to people all the time. It's just a habit of mine. I've had it for years. It doesn't matter where I run into them. The other day, I was talking with the guy at the deli who was getting me some sliced ham and turkey. Okay, and we started talking, and we started talking politics, of course, because that's what I do.
Right.
So, I said to him, he's a young man, and I said to him, politics is everything. People say I don't like talking politics, or I don't want to talk politics. Well, it's the air you breathe. It's the water you drink. It's the food you eat. It's the medicine you take. It's absolutely everything in your life.
Right.
And it's more important than just brushing it off. I'm opening a T-shirt store pretty soon, and one of the T-shirts says, "Not voting isn't rebellion. It's surrender."
Right.
and it's very,
accurate.
Very true.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so I wish that people would pay more attention to that, and like we talked about earlier, that your local vote counts so much more.
Right. Absolutely.
Than the presidential election years. Turning out only in presidential years just makes no sense. It boggles my mind.
Right.
I've been in Milford for since 1995, thereabouts. 1994, I think I moved to Milford. at least since 2006, I've voted in every single election. I think I missed one election in all that time. One of the marijuana referendums here in Milford.
Oh, okay.
I missed. But for the most part, I've voted in every single election. Spring elections for town offices, primaries, special election primaries, special elections, everything.
Right.
It's vitally important that people do that. People really should get out and vote.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. The most important thing they can do.
Right.
We have still a little bit of time. Anything else that you'd like to cover?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm open to any questions. You know, I like to say I'm not. Politicians typically love to talk. I'm sort of the exception. I'm more of a listener. You know, I'm not.
Right.
You know.
Let's talk a little bit about renewable energy. Where are you on renewable energy? I don't know if you followed the bills that came out of the House recently. The Senate passed a very aggressive renewable energy bill or energy bill. The House wasn't quite as aggressive as the Senate. It kind of disappointed me a little bit, but they did come up with something. They did finally pass a good bill
Right.
that's going to help. What are your thoughts on renewables, and would that be a good industry to try to attract to this area?
Right. I know we've put in not insignificant solar fields in South Uxbridge. I think that can be an asset to our tax base. I think there's a lot of opportunity to create good paying jobs in clean energy. And I mean, global warming, climate change is a pretty significant concern for this state, you know, especially the people who live out on the Cape, especially for the people who live out on the islands, who are facing flooding, who are facing extreme weather events. I don't know what was in the bills specifically.
The Senate bill was very aggressive. The Senate bill lifted the net metering cap so that there'd be no more cap. Right now, there's a cap on the amount of net metering that the investor-owned utilities have to reimburse for.
Okay.
And so the Senate bill lifted that cap, which is something I really think should happen. The House bill did not. The Senate bill also increased the renewable portfolio standard. That's the amount of energy sold in the state that has to come from renewable sources. That is scheduled, it's on a schedule to increase by 1% every year prior to this bill passing. The Senate said, let's increase that to 3% per year. The House rolled that back to 2% with a review 7 or 8 years from now. Okay, so all in all, it's still a good bill, but I wish it had been better. I wish it had been more like the Senate bill. The Senate bill was really kind of an end-all, be-all.
Right.
And unfortunately, they just didn't put that through for us in the House.
Right.
But still in all, I work in the solar power industry, and so anything that's favorable for solar power is something that I look to it's my livelihood, and those are the types of things that I want to see happen. I want to see them passed. Right. The interesting thing that's coming up in the solar power world is this transition from the SREC program to the SMART program. SRECs are solar renewable energy certificates, and they've worked since 2010, since the Green Communities Act took effect.
Right.
They've worked to increase adoption of solar power in the state. When SREC 1 was released, the target was to have 400 megawatts installed by 2020.
Right.
We reached 400 megawatts in 2013.
Oh,
wildly successful.
Wow, absolutely.
Wildly successful.
Absolutely.
So in 2013, they passed a bill quadrupling the target to 1.6 gigawatts of installed capacity.
Right.
And that was, again, the target for 2020. We reached that last year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they have both been wildly successful. Now, SREC 1 was very, very aggressive. They had a fantastic price per SREC. You earn one of these for every time you generate 1 megawatt hour, 1,000 kilowatt hours of power.
Right.
Okay. So you earn one SREC every time. In the first bill, those were worth around $500 each, and that helped to assuage the cost of going solar. With the SREC 2 program, they dropped. Right now, they're trading around $250 per SREC, but after 2017, you only get 80% of that. So most people that have gone solar since January 2017, they're getting about $200 per SREC, which is still advantageous. It's still fantastic. It still helps you to pay for your system. Systems pay for themselves in about 4 or 5 years.
Right.
And then you get 30 or 40 years of clean, free energy. Out of the system. It's fantastic. It really is. The SMART program is going to be a little bit different, but it's going to be on bill. which is kind of nice. So when you generate power with the SMART program, they have a definite set amount of money that they're going to give you every month
Right.
for that power that you generated, and you see it on your bill.
Oh,
So your bill will be eliminated, and you'll actually get money from the utility
Right,
on a
right.
monthly basis, which that helps you to make your payment on the system. The SMART program is still really good, and so the message is let's keep this going.
Absolutely. I know my neighbor across the street installed solar panels a few years ago, and that's what he's saying. He gets money back
Yeah.
every year from because he's generating more power than he's using.
Right.
You know?
Right. Exactly. He's got no electric bill.
Right.
He's getting checks in the mailbox every 90 days.
Right.
I mean, you just can't go wrong. So many people right now are going solar, and they build excess capacity onto the roof, and then they buy an electric car.
Right.
I did that for a customer of mine in Hopedale a number of years ago, where we put a system on his roof that covered his entire electricity bill and most of his commute because he had a Nissan Leaf.
Oh,
He
okay.
had an electric bill of about $300 a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
For his household use and his commute. It was tremendous.
Absolutely.
And that's the kind of stuff that we need to do, and that's the kind of stuff that has a positive impact.
Right. I think there's a great opportunity right now for Massachusetts to sort of become a leader in the United States for clean energy, for renewable energy.
Yeah. Yeah, we really have been, and it's good to see that continue.
Absolutely.
So Pat, we're out of time.
All right. Hey,
thank you so much.
Thank you for having me,
coming
John. I
in
appreciate it.
To be on the show. I really appreciate it. Good luck in the primary.
Thank you.
I hope it all works out for you. And if you do get to Beacon Hill, represent well, okay?
Thank you.
All right.
I will.
Thanks, Pat. You've been watching All Politics is Local. All Politics is Local is a production of the Greater Blackstone Valley Democrats. For more information about the Greater Blackstone Valley Dems, feel free to visit our website at www.gbvdems.org. Good night, everybody.